you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business. Not because they want to do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shit.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Great content coming your way. I hope it's great. We'll find out after it's done. I don't like to make the assumption that it's going to be great until we've actually gone through it and realized it was spectacular. A little ego there, but why not? We do a lot of content. I want to be happy today. This is a tough topic, though. All jokes aside, there's a lot of facilities that throughout the course of their existence, they may have gone through some bad times. Just a negative reputation. And then what happens here is eventually you're going to have to fix that reputation, build back that respect that obviously needs to exist for people to trust that that facility is where it needs to be. And it's not always easy, guys. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why a facility could have a negative reputation. It could be as simple as one incident that can get generalized out, make national news, and then there's that forever label. Or there's just a facility that's just habitual and just negative and wrong behavior. So now when you come in and you're trying to create a positive reputation from the ashes of what's left of integrity and professionalism, it could be a lot of work. So what we want to do is we want to try to see, or just have this discussion now, is what needs to be done. The reason why this is an important topic is because there's a lot of good staff, a lot of good officers that are caught up in that negative reputation, which means that unfortunately, it would have been a perfect career for them. But unfortunately, they got put into a facility that just has a negative reputation, and they're highly professional. It just happens to be they happen to be the victims of a facility that just labels you the moment you go in. And I'm thinking that there are certain things we can do here that we can discuss that can help that staff maintain the integrity they need. So even when they're walking into that facility that has that negative reputation, they know they're going to be part of building something great, and they can keep their chest out and still maintain that level of pride that you need to be good in this profession, to be effective. And I have two great guests that are going to be on with me today. We have famous author of The Cage Was Her Cocoon, Connie Alleyne. I'm saying it right. Is it Connie Alleyne? Constantine Alleyne? Has it changed?
Oh my goodness, cut it out. Hi everyone, Connie Alleyne here. I'm the founder and president of the Civilian Corrections Academy and podcast host of The Fly Behind the Wall, and now the author of The Cage Was Her Cocoon, and things are good. I can't complain. And no, my name hasn't changed, and I will always be available to Tier Talk.
Aw, thank you, Connie. I appreciate that. And by the way, I can call it anytime. We've done shows at 4 or 5 in the morning, so and I'm sure she was up waiting for the call. I mean, that's the cool thing. Always waiting for that Tier Talk phone call. Thank you, Connie. Thank you for the dedication. And we also have Gary York, a YouTube influencer himself, also has 2 books, Corruption Behind Bars, Inside the Inner Circle. Also, a kid's author now. He has a book out there for children. My daughter will be getting it soon, so I can't wait to give you her thoughts on that. But also the reason why I have Gary on the show, which is very important as well, obviously Connie being at that higher level, she's been through this too, but Gary has actually kind of been involved. And what I mean by that, he has investigated things that could really destroy the reputation. And Gary would have to, obviously after those investigations, I'm sure there's going to be a concern where, okay, this facility's got a bad label. What do we do to maintain good employee morale and ultimately get that trust back? Because that's the key, the trust. So Gary, I'm sure this topic's important for you, correct?
Well, Anthony, thank you very much. And yes, building a trust between the community and corrections. You always hear about law enforcement, community policing, but we must build a trust between community and corrections. And I think you've got a great topic today. And in order to do it, we have to start with the staff at the prison and build our trust from the inside outward. So I appreciate you having me on. I love your topic.
Yeah, I think this is going to be interesting because we're definitely going to start with that first when we come back from our sponsors, that trust factor. Now, guys, if you haven't, the show Tier Talks for you, brave men and women that work in corrections. So please Subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. We're going to go to our sponsor. We come back. Let's talk about cleaning that reputation. Stand by.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it, it's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
All right, then we're back. Guys, I forgot. I got the Inmate Manipulation book out there as well. Link is in the description. Hey, so first of all, I want to go back to what Gary said, and maybe we'll go with Gary first, is that there is a trust, right? So when you have a facility that has been kind of in a history of just negative stuff, or even just, again, one incident that's been generalized, whatever the case may be, but now there's an effort to clean that reputation. You have trust. There's a trust concern, right? Now, a lot of people are only going to see trust one way. They're going to see that the public needs to have faith in those that are working in the facility. And I get that. But like Gary said, there's also the staff that have done their job, that unfortunately are just the victim of circumstances. And now they also need to trust in the system that is going to be in play to revamp, this negative reputation. So sometimes I feel, Gary, and tell me if this is true, is that when you only look at it from one side, so if I only look at it from, if I'm in a higher position, and I'm only looking at it from the trust that's needed from the public, which is most likely immediate, but usually impulsive and doesn't have longevity to it, then the problem is it may look good on the surface for a short time, but eventually what's going to happen here is it's not going to last, which means that I have to find a way to listen to their concerns, guys. I'm not ignoring the public's concerns, but I have to see if there's a way that I could also get the trust of staff to maintain whatever needs to be done, to let them know that you can trust what's happening here, especially if you've been doing the right thing. I don't want to go into a facility and start attacking everything and then wind up losing the trust from the people that have done the right thing. So, Gary, what's your thoughts on balancing that trust, the public, but what most people forget, the inside out?
Yeah. I'll tell you what, an Army buddy of mine used a quote. He may be stealing from somewhere else, but it's a heck of a quote. Trust is like a house of cards. It takes forever to build that house, but only one mistake can crumble that house of trust, and it's gone. And that happened, and I'm not going to get into the long story. I'm just going to give you a very short version of the effects of this case. Charlotte Correctional Institution in Florida had 12 officers indicted and some deaths with inmates and so forth. Well, without telling that story, when all was said and done, the entire community was looking at Charlotte Correctional Institution officers as all bad guys. I had officers tell me when it was all over, they would pull into a gas station on the way to work, pump gas in their vehicle in uniform, and someone would go, "Oh, look, it's one of them. It's one of those. It's one of those beaters. It's one of those abusive officers." So, you know what? That's a shame, because that was just a small group that made this prison with hundreds of officers look bad. And these officers that are honest, hardworking officers had to face the challenge of rebuilding in that community down there in Charlotte County. And a new warden came in, which is very interesting, what you're talking about. Now this new warden is tasked with doing what you're just talking about. He was sent there to try to build the trust back, not only amongst staff, but the community. And, you're going to have to get all your staff on board, and you're going to have to show them trust. You're going to have to build trust with your staff as a leader from a sergeant up to the warden by sharing important information when you can. I'm not talking about, active investigation or something, but share information. Ask your officers for feedback. Ask them to tell you what they're concerned about, but you have to be a great listener. So if the management from the sergeant on up listens, communicates, and works with the front line who I always say is the backbone of our agency, you can start to build that trust like that house of cards. Don't let that one serious incident crumble the whole house. It's just an incident that occurred. We'll get to the community after we fix ourselves internally.
Right. And I want to mention something before we get to Connie too, is people have to realize something. When you have that negative reputation, you start to create change. There could be an us versus them mentality that comes into play. And let me explain why. I'll see if Connie can complement this. I don't believe in us versus them, by the way. I don't. I think us versus them is also very divisive. I don't believe that's custody versus inmates, because when you have good professional staff that's job is to advocate for the inmate population, that's their job. I don't want us to have that us versus them with them, because that's their job, and ultimately we need them as a team. But what I'm saying here is that you got to realize something. When a facility is going through something negative and you now have to go in and change things, there could be an us versus them, because the positive things that you're going to try to implement is because of what? Failure from people not doing what they're supposed to do, or people doing a little aggressively, like whatever, use of force, whatever the case may be. So the thing is that what you have to do is that for the staff that has done the right thing, that, you know, you want to kind of keep that trust. Somehow, I believe they need to be involved in the positive change and not left behind, because at that point, if they are not, like Gary said, if your ears are not on the ground listening to what they have to say, because you're walking in with this anti-custody mentality, well, then the problem is that they're going to see these changes as adverse and just, again, look at the context. So Connie, what's your thoughts on, again, when you're implementing something, that is going to be a culture shift, do you want to do it in an isolated fashion that just says, hey, these are the changes that have to happen? Or are you going to try to, get some incentive, from these people who have done the right thing and see if they can get involved?
Yeah, I think it really matters that when you come into one of these situations that you actually do your due diligence to understand exactly the impact. Not only go from the rumors and everything you've heard prior to you getting there, but it matters that you go in, you understand from the people who worked there, what exactly happened and how it's impacted the people who are still there. Because I think many times people come in and they have their own agenda, whether it's, and I don't mean agenda in a negative way. I mean agenda in that, they may have gotten some marching orders. Here's the changes we want to see made, right? And so I think you have to really ascertain so here are the changes that I know my higher ups want to see made, but I also have to take into the account the people. And anytime there's I don't want to say a divide with the people, but anytime the people are not included in the process, there's always a breakdown. Whatever you're trying to do will not be successful if you have not included the people in the conversation. So when you go in and you've got this great vision on how you want to see things evolve, you got to understand that there are the people who are going to be doing the work. The change is going to be with the people. And if the people don't buy into this message that you're throwing in at them, you're not going to see any change. You're going to get very frustrated. It's almost like beating the dead horse, right? So, as I think about going into a facility that has a negative reputation, whoever goes in, I think it really matters the chemistry. Like that leader has to have good chemistry with their people. Not that they have to go in and be friends with everybody. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that when you go in, you've got to be willing to hear people out. You may hear some things you don't want to hear. There may be some realities that you were not familiar with or that you weren't prepared for. And so as a leader, you've got to make some adjustments. Maybe the vision was one thing, but now that I've got new information, I want to include that. And sometimes it's a matter of talking with the staff to let them know what you're thinking, right? The transparency, I think, has to be both sides. In order for the staff to trust you, they got to know where you're coming from. Like, what is this person coming in here trying to make us do without actually telling us what's the plan? And you may get the feedback from the staff like, well, and I'm not talking about the naysayers that are like, oh, that's never going to work, right? Because we know in every crowd, there's somebody, oh, that's never going to work. We did that already, right? We get that. But in coming in and saying, so here's what I have been told. let's just work through what this reality is for me and help me truly understand what our reality is in a facility. Because I think what our higher ups may see versus what's really going on can be totally different pictures, right? And so I think certainly you having a leader coming who's going to say, I know that these people, I can't do the change without the people. And the moment you acknowledge that, I think you approach it much differently.
Yeah, and the reason why I think this is a great topic, let's talk about the leader. So you're going to get some pressure for the public for immediate action. I think their solutions are very limited. They just want to see discipline and removals, in my opinion. And I guess maybe that's what's surfaced. That's what you can see. But that's not longevity. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't have to happen. Don't get me wrong. If someone does something wrong, yeah, you got to do it. But there's also people that are doing something good, and you don't want them working in fear. You know, you got to motivate them. You know, you still got to make sure that they want to do a job. You know what I mean? If you're going crazy and writing up every little thing, then you're going to have people that are not going to want to do their job because they're afraid that they too are going to get written up. So I want to kind of get this thought out there real quick. For the leaders that are coming into this position that have to kind of change the reputation, there's going to be a push from the public. We understand that. They're going to want something immediate, something in paper. I mean, they want people written up, and I get that. But they don't care, or in my opinion, I've never seen it, but maybe I'll go to Gary first and Connie. I'll see if you both can answer this. I don't know if the public cares for longevity. And what I mean by that is, I don't think that when the public is going through this, wanting this change immediate, I don't think they care about the employee morale. What's going to happen to those who have done their job? I know that they're quick to generalize, well, you know, screw custody or what. It wasn't all of them. It was a selected few. So for that leader to maintain a longer plan, which means that this person's got to come in, make some changes, but then also has to maintain. People forget, you have to maintain. So I don't know if the public at that point cares about longevity, or more importantly, what's going to help promote longevity is employee morale. What's your thoughts, Gary? You think the public really cares about employee morale at that point?
Well, as bad as I hate to say it, I just said something the other day on some social media that public, I actually said it right to the people. I said, look, to the public. Actually, I was talking to inmates' families. And I said, as long as you keep saying we're bad, we're no good, we do this, you're this, and name calling and verbal abuse, nothing's going to change. I said, you know, tell us what you want to happen in an intelligent manner. Let's speak about it, because name calling does nothing. And I told them that I sometimes feel that all you want to see is just what you said. And you want to see an officer arrested, and you want to see that officer go to jail, and you want to see him get prosecuted and put in prison. That's if somebody does something wrong, yes, that needs to be done. I'm not saying it doesn't need to be done, but for goodness sake, folks, that's not the answer to fixing this problem we're discussing today. The answer is some type of community relations, whether it be by letting you folks go through a correctional academy, civilian adult academy, and see what we train for. Letting your young folks, your teenagers, go through a correctional officer training academy. Let them see what we train for and what we have to do. I know we can't bring them into prison, you know, and say, we're going to show you what we do. That won't happen. So why don't we do some youth academies and adult academies for corrections? The law enforcement has all that going on already in lots of places. They can actually see what we have to deal with. And in that academy, let them see some of the incidents that we deal with on video. Anyway, that was just a thought that came to me to try to get a better understanding between the community and us. And then on the inside, yes, Anthony, don't ever ask your officers to do anything that is wrong, because that's going to lose the trust. And don't ever retaliate against an officer who is coming forward admitting a wrongdoing. Try to work with that officer when they do that. Don't try to find a way to fire them. And then when the officers see you working with somebody who's telling the truth, and you worked for that officer and you got them through that problem, that's what we want: trust and truth. And I believe that the officers will have to finally kick on. And one thing Connie said, and I'll make it short, I'm so glad she said that. We always have people that aren't going to work. I'm not going to do it. Negativity is another issue we got to take care of, but we can talk about that whenever you want. But negativity is another issue. We need to get those people that are on the negative side and get them back in that lane.
Yeah, well, you also touched on something maybe Connie could also compliment, is that when you have a leader that's going in with that intense amount of pressure, they are going to deal with employees that are going to make mistakes. When I talk about negligence, when I talk about criminal, just mistakes, and they're going to treat that employee almost at the same level of someone who is negligent or making a mistake, or I'm sorry, who is negligent or doing something criminal, which again, now you start building an environment that there's no trust. People are going to start hiding their mistakes. So again, kind of just on that perspective, one thing is, do you think the public does care about the employee morale? I want your answer on that. But I also want to answer the pressure that new supervisor that's going to take over that facility is now going to go through. Do you think that could affect them being fair and objective when looking at the concerns of that facility?
So for the first question, I don't think that the public is particularly thoughtful or caring about the morale, right? They're looking for results. They're looking for the outcome. They're looking to see that the scandal has come full circle, right? They've been busted, they've been arrested, they're in jail too, right? Like that's what they're looking to see. And we're not saying that officers or civilians shouldn't be held accountable, because they should. If they are doing something criminal, they should be held accountable, right? But I think the reality is that we never know all of the circumstances behind a lot of these incidents or events that happen. And we don't know how everyone has been impacted by these events that happen. And not everyone is like, oh yeah, protect the officer, right? There's some people who want to be in support of what's right, right? There are people who are in support of what's right, and whatever that outcome is, they're all for it. But we can't ignore that if something happens to one of our brothers or sisters, that it does impact us, right? And I feel like somehow there's this expectation that we just cheer and we move on. And that's just not a reality of human emotion, right? Like something has happened to someone, whether it's good or bad, they're evil, this is what they did. It's like, wow, like this happened here. This happened where I work at, And many people do internalize that, and they try to figure out, like, what didn't I see? Or did I see something? I dismissed it. Like they think about themselves and what I have done, what that person did, and what I've gotten caught up, and how did they get caught up? It's just like all these questions that we don't necessarily entertain, because a lot of the details are privileged behind these different events. And so they kind of go unanswered, but that doesn't mean that the staff isn't still worried or concerned or wondering how someone got caught up, right? I think it's hard for us to think just the worst of someone, like, oh yeah, he was just a piece of crap. I mean, yeah, there are some that are just a piece of crap, right? But we don't necessarily go to that first. I think we first assume positive intent and that, no, they wouldn't do that. And then when we start to learn the details behind what happened and how they got caught up, we may come to terms with it. It doesn't mean that everyone is just holding hands and working well together again. And so I think internally, we have to be very intentional about maintaining some semblance of staff morale, helping. I mean, I don't know how many facilities do team building or what that looks like, or do things that bring people together in a positive way that's not just work related, right? Like, how do we get people into a space where we're actually building that morale so that we could begin to shift gears? A lot of times the leader comes in and they're kind of just like digging the heels in and trying to get things done, and just kind of ignoring that there is a human side of this that we have to address, or else we won't be able to make the change that we're looking to make.
Right. And I love what you're saying too, because it also touches on involvement. When we go in, and I kind of touched on this a little bit at the beginning, but when we go in, are we involving the staff in that change, in that evolution, or are we building that evolution in spite of them? Because again, just the context of why it needs to happen. And now hopefully we can get the good ones to get involved, because I think once they get involved, they want it to succeed because they're personally invested. But I would like to also think they have value. So we're going to now discuss culture. So I know a big part of fixing the reputation is obviously looking at the culture. And sometimes that's not just the facility. I mean, that's literally going after the agency too, and just kind of looking to see, what is the agency training? What is the agency doing? I mean, what has to be revamped? So when it comes to the culture, when it comes to the bigger picture, I think it really starts with giving the people that are coming in an understanding beyond doubt of what the mission is, and it's not an isolated mission. All right, guys, we're all about safety and security, yes, but rehabilitation is a very big part of what we do. And I think right now, as we start to move forward, we need to start seeing how safety and security and rehabilitation work together, not separate, which means that if they're in the academy, let's give custody the mindset that here's how you can help them. Here's how you can be a part of them. Let's get the civilians to teach custody their perspective. And of course, vice versa. However the civilians are picked up, let's have them sit down with some of the custody trainers and let's build this bridge. But I want people to know at the end, it's not safety and security or rehabilitation, because sometimes, even though it says and, if you work at a facility, especially when you're at that higher level and you're trying to facilitate the needs of all departments, you see or more than and. It's true. And then what happens is departments also go into survival mode. So, concerned with medical versus custody. They're both concerned about their own priorities. But at the end, we as a facility, if one department wins and the other loses, we still lose. So I think one thing is when it comes to the culture is to give a better understanding of what's actually the focus here. And guys, right now, the focus is rehabilitation and reentry. Guys, I wish I could tell you something different, but that is the truth. So we need to get those recruits that are coming into this academy thinking that they're going into corrections to, throw down and do this, because we have those people, unfortunately. I know we do. Not everyone, small percentage, but they're there. But because you could have one or two that could be that wolf, then universal precaution. We go in there and say, this is not the mentality that we want. And I'll guarantee you, every officer I've ever worked next to will tell you the same thing. I don't want that next to me. I don't want someone that's ultra aggressive. I want someone that knows how to freaking communicate. So I think that if we start showing the partnership, start reinforcing what the mission is about, then the people that try to go the aggressive manner when it's not needed wind up pushing themselves out. I'll go with Gary first on that. Maybe Connie could also touch on that, if you agree or not. I'm just curious.
Well, Anthony, I totally agree. And I'm telling you, yesterday, my wife told me this. We were discussing her 35-year career as a correctional officer. She said, one of the things I miss is the camaraderie with all my fellow officers and the family. And she said the most important thing to her was the trust between her and other officers. That's one thing you discussed. The second thing she told me was I always felt it was a good day when maybe I made one little positive influence in an inmate's mind that made them look in the positive direction of life. And I said, wow. So I'm using her quote. It's a little bit different than what I said, but I'm using that quote in my next book. She told me that, and I said, wow, you're talking about working with your officers, being a family, and trust, she threw in there. But you're also told me in the same sentence, I'll send you the quote later that she gave me yesterday. In the same sentence, she said, I want to see inmates be successful and get out of prison and do the right thing. I mean, I don't know how else to put it more in a nutshell than that, to say, yes, I agree with what you just said.
Yeah, and Connie, just out of curiosity, I definitely, Gary, I love that, because one thing is it shows that, we're not primitive Neanderthals, that all because I and pro-custody doesn't mean I'm anti-inmate. And I think sometimes they think we have that mentality. And I think what's great is that if we introduce what's needed right at the academy, so when they go into the facilities, they know what's expected, but it also has to be reinforced in the facility. So you have to start at the academies, don't get me wrong, but then you have to maintain it in the facilities. That teamwork can help change that culture and reputation. But Connie, what's your thought about that initial attempt to change that culture? Where does that have to start from?
So I do believe it matters that we share knowledge, right? Like, because I feel that a lot of times misunderstandings happen because we don't share the knowledge, right? So you come in, you want to do all these wonderful things. I think it's great. I don't want to negate that. But if you come in and you have a perspective that seems to be different from the culture, then sharing the knowledge of why we're moving in a certain direction will matter, right? Because that's when people will get an understanding, their own understanding, right? Because I think it's not so much I'm telling you this and you've got to just take it in because I told you, but it's being able to explain and share the knowledge in a manner that people can receive it and be like, oh, okay. So it's not like you've got to make a case, but I think it matters that we take time to explain. So this is why we are shifting gears from this culture to that culture. Here's how we're being held accountable for that shift. That way there's no misunderstanding that this is just my random whimsy feeling like, oh, it should work, right? No, here's what we're doing. Here's why we're doing it. I feel like that has always worked because it shows that you respect me enough to know that for me to buy in, I have to understand the mission. So when you talked about the mission, I think it's really important that we are clear on the mission and the vision and where we see this evolution happening and what it's going to look like.
Right now, guys. So again, the culture itself, obviously a transition, but it's not just something that starts by just staying focused into that one facility. It does require a change of perspective. So it does require to see what's really going on at those academies and what are we letting loose into the world. And I will tell you another thing, guys. When you're a rookie and you're entering this profession, you do look for that sense of belonging, but you're also a blank slate. So the more information we can provide those rookies, and like Connie said, the more we can give them an understanding of why and give them some real good core beliefs, they will have a foundation of who they want to connect to when they go to the facilities, because we're going to instill it in them in day one. So they're going to go in there and you're going to give them the proper mindset, the proper, this is the reasons why, like Connie said, and just give them some positive belief about their influence and what they do when they come into this profession. No matter how lost they may be when they get here, at least they have that foundation of what's expected of them. So instead of just being thirsty to belong to somebody, anybody, you get them to have a positive belief. They may still want to have that connection, but they kind of know who it is that they're looking for. That's why it's very important at the facility that we are connected to what's happening in the academy. So we can continue the transition and then still cultivate what we want, because we don't want to have all this effort in the academy and then lose it because, either we didn't give the person the right mindset, or even if we did, the people that are training haven't even been in the academy for a while. So whatever you're implementing new in the academy should definitely be something that's done at the facilities as well, to keep the mindset going. So these people that are coming in don't come in as outcasts. They come in and they're quick to find like-minded individuals that will keep the mission where it needs to be. And now we start maintaining growth. But it does start with those people from the academy leaving with a sense of value in the work that's going to be done. So then they have value for themselves. And then when they go in, the people they connect to will not lower that level of value. Because if I'm in the academy and I get the right mindset and I got myself where I want to be, and I kind of start to understand what it is that I want to do, maybe not the end game, but just who I want to be, I start putting myself on this great pedestal of professionalism. So when I go in, I'm going to connect with people that I feel are going to keep me where I need to be. So Gary, again, with the mindset, you know, is it important that that mindset carries over from A to B?
Well, 100% correct. The mindset is one of the most important things there is. Now, the academies are there to build the foundation. Any job you do, I don't care what it is, you have to have a foundation before you can start working. And I would like to see, and I know it's happening in some places, so I'm not saying it's not happening, but I would love to see the academy personnel interacting with the prison management and supervisors and the officers, the seasoned officers, more, discussing these things, having a meeting. Hey, when I've got these guys at the academy, what do you folks at the prison think is a very important topic that we need to discuss with them, which is one you just pointed out. We have to build their mindset so that they're strong. They know they're in there to learn, listen and learn, ask some questions, but they also know not to follow this officer. This officer is not the way I want to be. I want to be like this officer over here. So great point. And, you know, you have to build that transparency and be open with them from the beginning, starting at the academy. Be open with them at the beginning. And I think that will help a young officer a lot.
Yeah, like navigate their way. And Connie, I got to ask you too, that transition. I mean, again, what am I learning at the academy now? Even if I learn all these good things and I want to go ahead and, you know, get my value in the facility, if I don't have the right people to model off of, there's a good chance everything that was taught in the academy gone.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the risk we take when we don't prepare, right? Like when, you know, I think we want to identify those people who are really great mentors or who can be really great mentors and try to partner those great mentors with the new folks who come in, you know, especially when you have that person who's okay answering the questions, right? Like, because new people, they just don't know. And so they're asking because they're curious. Maybe they're asking because this is a little different from what they learned in the academy. They're asking because maybe they have a best practice. Like I know on the medical side of the house, if they come in and there's like a best practice that they learned out in the community and we don't quite do that in the prison, like that's where the synergies come, that you've got an old person and, you know, not an old person, but like an old timer, someone with more tenure, and a new person who come together and they can create this internal best practices that make them very effective. So I think we have to be intentional about partnering, you know, the new folks in with people who do have good habits. And the only caution I would throw out there is that we don't want to burn out that person or those few people, those people who are like our good people, right? Because they end up taking on the responsibility. And sometimes it can be a little overwhelming given their work responsibility. But I think we just need to be intentional about that because we don't want that happening to the new person. We don't want them coming in and we don't want what they learned in the academy being completely undone by someone who just, I don't want to say is rogue, but someone who's just been doing their own thing for so long that, you know, their own thing seems like the right thing.
Yeah, and guys, that initial impression matters too, because if you have one mindset from the academy and then that person's going into the profession and there's a different mindset at the facility, we're going to push that rookie away. You understand that? Because the mindsets don't match. So all the work from the academy now actually will isolate this employee. And at this point, this employee is expecting to go into a profession that embraces them, you know, because again, it's a profession that we need each other. So now I found core values, but it's not the same for the facility. They have a different culture. And now the problem is as soon as I go in, I'm an outcast. You know, I know sometimes custody, there are some custody that when they do the right thing, some custody staff will call them, oh, you're not a social worker. You know, guys, if the inmate needs it, you got to do your job. I mean, so, and the one thing you don't want to tell that person is that Because now what happens if there's a social worker next to them that hears that? Look at the divide that we just did. Because that wasn't said in a praise, or that wasn't said that, that's for a social worker to do. That was, you're not a social worker. That there's a bit of an insult there. And again, the reason why we're mentioning this divide is part of the reputation that we have to protect definitely comes from how we work together behind the wall, because if we all work together as one and we get the mission done and we're all involved, we start carrying ourselves at a higher level. And then when people go to challenge us, we're proud to say what we do. I think the one thing here right now is that we're not proud of who we are. So when the reputation gets attacked, we don't have 2 good feet to stand on, because we ourselves have problems believing in the work we do, or our purpose in that work, our investment in that work. So if the world has shifted where, yes, safety and security is always the foundation, that's the blank canvas, we know that, but it's really geared for that reentry and that, the rehabilitation that leads to reentry, then we need to get invested in that. So when an inmate is successful, we all can take part of that, like Gary York's wife did. We all can take part of that in that success, and then wind up realizing that, what, guys, our work has value. Because again, these programs wouldn't exist if custody didn't provide safety and security. I don't know if custody realized how important that is, because they minimize the rehabilitation side. So think about this, guys. If you guys are providing safety and security for those programs, but you minimize the efforts of those programs, then indirectly you're minimizing how important your role is in regards to rehabilitation. So if you can find value and you're connected, and then when people come up and they go to talk to you and your chest goes out and you're able to talk with confidence and challenge what people say, because I'm going to guarantee you, every time I'm out in the public, the first thing they say is, you're not giving inmates enough. And I'm quick to just go off, because I believe in the work that's done, because I see the professionals. But that's pride. And you know what? I welcome it. I'm not afraid of it. I want someone to say stupid shit so I can go ahead and take the pedestal. And I'll keep on talking even when everybody's walking away, because I'm saying shit that they don't want to hear, but I know it's the truth. And the reason why they walk away is because they can't challenge it. You can say whatever you want in a distance. That's fine. But I got 18 years experience. So I don't care what anyone says. My word has fucking value. And so does the word on the panel, obviously. So the reputation that we need to protect, or we need to, make sure we maintain that respect, starts with us also having pride in what we do and the connection that it does to rehabilitation, to what the mission is. So again, I'll start with Connie first on this time. Let's talk about pride, because that's a big part of maintaining that. And how hard is it to have or maintain pride when you're dealing with a facility that has just been destroyed because of attacks on their professionalism and integrity?
I mean, it's tough. Because we're humans, right? Especially if you were that person who's doing the right thing. You're out there doing the right thing, and everything that I've done now gets negated by the 1 or 2 bad apples that have been highlighted, right? And how is that fair to me, right? And so my belief in what I do, as hard as I work, is like, no matter what I'm doing, look at what they see. This is what they say. And some people, they'll fight the good fight, and they'll be like you. They won't walk away until the understanding is there, right? Because we're raising awareness, we're educating people by just talking to them about what we do and the reality of what we do and how tough it is. Because I think many people underestimate just how tough it can be, especially going into a facility that has a bad reputation. Right? How do you somehow still come out and feel proud about what you're doing when you have that overcast, right? That overshadow, that like, yeah, but that's what happened there, right? But for me, I just think that it's important that we continue to stay focused and stay professional. And if that means having that same conversation multiple times, that's what it may mean. It's not one person who's responsible for changing gears and helping us to get into a better light. It's all of our responsibility. If you're like those folks who've still been there working hard and doing the right thing, you can't allow like the noise to distract you from your mission, which is, you know what, we're going to dig out this rubble and we're going to get to where we need to be because we do work hard. We're not going to allow those two clowns or whoever it was to get the glory when in fact there's so many of us that we're doing the right thing and we're trying to make sure that not only are we doing our jobs, but we're also trying to keep this population safe. Like I think it's being okay acknowledging that this is a job where we don't get appreciation, right? And it's unfortunate, right? It's unfortunate how much people sacrifice in these roles and they don't get the appreciation. And so sometimes we have to give it to ourselves. And that's just it.
You know what's powerful about what you said, though, is that we don't get the appreciation, which means that I love it. The pride that we have can only come from us, you know, and that's from the value that you have in the work that you do, you know, and however you have to place the value, you know, but it really does come from the value you have, which can be instilled at the beginning and maintained as they go through, you know, and Gary, I you know, just to run with the pride aspect, if you keep people involved and, you know, they know that the success of this facility is not in spite of me, but because of me, you know, especially when you have this negative reputation, you got these officers that are good or these staff that are good that are kind of caught up in this negative mix. And now you do this change where, you know, just the context of the reason for the change is pretty much we're changing because all the staff, it's not all the staff. So I think the ears to the ground, that involvement can help with that pride because that person's invested in the success and they can share in the success. And a good leader, Gary, and tell me if you agree, a good leader that takes that position, that's looking to clean, but also maintain that employee morale, they're going to give credit back to that front line because for so long they have been pushed aside or bastardized.
Exactly. And I'm going to tell you in just a second about giving that credit back that you're talking about. But first of all, Connie's so right. Never let a few bad apples overshadow your pride. And don't let the community, whatever they say, overshadow your pride. Because listen, every day you go to work, one day you're a first responder saving a person's life, be it a staff member or an inmate. The next day, you're a firefighter grabbing that fire extinguisher and remembering what you learned from your academy firefighter training. And you're going in there and putting out that fire, saving lives again. The next day, you're a counselor. You know, you mentioned somebody said we're not social workers. No, on paper, we're not social workers. But why are we trained to watch for inmates that look like they're about to commit suicide and know the signs and know how to talk to them and get them help? No, we're not going to be the counselor, but we're going to ask a few questions and save that inmate's life by doing that. Or a fellow officer who's having trouble at home financially or whatever it could be, and you notice the signs, you're going to be a counselor for them too, and help them and get them in the right direction. So the next day you may be in riot control. The next day you may be in hostage negotiations, crisis intervention. Don't ever let anybody tell you that this job is turning a key. Be proud of what you do. When people ask me what I retired as, I don't tell them all the things I did when I got promoted or whatever. I just simply say one thing. I'm a retired correctional officer because I'm proud of it. I'm not ashamed of that. Remember, we wear many, many hats. And getting back to your question, yes, I agree. A good leader will reward officers for doing all those things I just mentioned. If they went above and beyond, they need to have a letter written up the chain of command, and they need to be rewarded with something, a letter of appreciation, some type of an award from the agency to show how important you are to us. And I'll get off that chair.
Hey guys, there's going to be more to discuss, but we're going to push it for another video because there's more to fixing a reputation of a facility, guys. This is just the kind of the foundation. I don't think a lot of people worry about the employee morale. So I definitely wanted to start with that because to me, that's key, getting people involved. That's how it starts. But obviously related on where the negative reputation comes from, there could be specific concerns. We could talk about next time we're on, maybe a facility that's known for excessive use of force, what needs to be done on a more specific plan. But with that said, this was just more of a beginning of a dialogue that still has a lot of places left to go. This is just the beginning, guys. We're just touching the surface. There's so much more because it's not that easy. I just, again, had this dialogue because people forget that there's good people still working there. So I'm going to go in and just generalize punishment, and then you wind up continuing to lose the trust. Sure, you may get the trust of the public, maybe, but it's superficial if you don't get the trust of the people that, are working the front line who have done their job. And even in the next episode, we'll even talk about recognition of the routine things, because some people have even said, why are you going to recognize people for just doing what they're supposed to do? Because look what happened to them. They got generalized and bastardized for things they didn't do. So now we have to go back and give people an understanding of the work that's being done. So yes, if there's something that's noteworthy, even if it's in their routine, I'm going to recognize them because they need that. If I can do anything to build up their pride amongst, I'm sure, the BS that they're getting every day. I mean, I'll never forget me driving to work one day in uniform and a toll collector. Toll collector said, "Hey, you work at this facility?" And I said, "Yes." And he goes, "Is this all you do in this facility?" Wasn't a thank you. He was asking something that I would never do. I don't want to get too specific, but he didn't see the uniform and said thank you. Said he saw the uniform and saw me as a piece of shit, to be honest with you. So at the end, now knowing what I know, I would love to see that guy again. Because here I am still in the profession 18 years later, still believing it as if I was day one. But if we don't have that pride, and like Connie said, if we expect it from the outside, what that person doesn't realize, that toll collector, what that doesn't realize is you may have just pushed away a good officer. Don't realize that. Your little comment, your little bullshit statement could have made that officer drive to work, because I'm sure they have that long drive to work thinking, why am I doing this? Why is it worth it? And then especially when they go to a facility that doesn't have anything positive. Why am I here? Why am I doing this job? And then one day they leave and we just lost some good officer that was going to create some positive change because of a stupid toll collector. And the reason why, we're also at fault, because we've done nothing to give that person some belief in themselves that would have been able to tell that person that instant, or that would have instantaneously, yo, this is what we do. This is who we are. And then they continue to drive with positive motivation. They get to work with positive motivation, and they continue to do their career for 25 years, and they retire proud to be who they are. Pride matters. And I love what Connie said. I don't give a shit about the public, but you still have to instill that pride, because if you don't, the person's going to be vulnerable to shit like that. Hey, Gary, anything you'd like to say in closing?
I just want to tell everybody, stay positive, stay away from the negative folks. Thank you for your service. You can do it. My wife did 35 years. I did 28.8 years after the Army. Folks, you can do it. It's a job to be proud of. Don't let anybody tell you any different.
Well said, Gary. Hey, Connie, anything you'd like to say in closing?
I guess I just want to say, when we step into these roles, we have to be mindful that, or prepared to be influenced and to influence. And so as we prepare and we walk in kind of open to receive, to help, to do, to be used, but used in a way that it's like we are being used to help our organization be better, right? It's not like you just show up and I'm just doing my job. No, it's more than just doing your job, right? Like you can do a great job and know that your work is contributing to our industry. It's contributing to the agency being better. Your brother or your sister looks at you and see the work that you're doing. You don't know how you're encouraging them to put their best foot forward. a lot of that is coming from each other. We are encouraging each other to do better and to be better, and that elevates our industry. So I just want to say to all those who are out there doing the right thing that we see you and we appreciate you.
I love that. Now, guys, again, this is the end of the part one. It's more about, we're not going to have a positive reputation if we ourselves don't see it. And that starts with ourselves first, the work. And again, it starts with, right at the beginning of the academy. Are they going to keep that motivation going? Is the facility going to carry it through? I thought it was a great dialogue. Next discussion we'll have will be a little bit more specific. Maybe even talk about some security measures that could be taken if you do have rogue officers. But again, sometimes the answer isn't always in the immediate reaction. I want people to realize that. I'm not saying it doesn't have to happen, but that doesn't solve what's going to be for the long run. The long run is literally looking at what's been burnt down and try to get a better foundation. All I'm doing is sweeping stuff out. That doesn't change the foundation. So if I build a house based on the same foundation, it's going to fall again. As always, guys, the show is tipped. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.